Good evening, everyone. I would like to call the Cumberland School Committee meeting to order, and I apologize for the delayed start. It's 8:11. I would like to ask you for two things at the start of this. One, we'll start with, we'll stand and rise and take a moment of silence. One of our teachers at Cumberland High School passed away suddenly this week. It was Adam Gardner. He was a special education teacher at Cumberland High School. He was very well loved and respected. So we'll start with that, and then we'll move on to the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Pleasure of the committee.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Denon. Do I have a second?
Second, Madam Chair.
Second by Mr. Salvatore. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? And that motion carries 6-0 with Mrs. Teal absent this evening. Next item is the consent agenda. We're going to take these, I think, one by one. We need to amend the minutes from the 7:14 meeting because the consent agenda did not include the 6/18/2016 minutes and the 7/1 truancy report. So what I would need first is a motion to amend the regular meeting minutes from 7:14 to include those items.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Fiorello,
Second for discussion.
second by Mr. Denon for discussion.
Did you say 6-8 or 6/18?
Well, I'm not sure, but I meant 6/8.
Great.
So we have a motion and a second to amend the minutes. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? And that motion carries 6-0. And I need a motion to, why don't we take a motion to approve the minutes from the regular meeting for 7:14. Motion by Mr. Fiorello, as amended. Second by Mr. Salvatore. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? And that motion carries. And we'll go through the approval of minutes for executive session. We'll just take them one by one from 2016. Pleasure of the committee.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Denon. Do I have a second?
Second, Madam Chair.
Second by Mr. Fiorello.
Salvatore.
I'm sorry, Mr. Salvatore. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? And that motion carries 6-0. Now we have executive session from 7:14. Pleasure of the committee.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Fiorello, second by Mr. Salvatore. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries 6-0. What we should have done is pulled those minutes out of the consent agenda. It's all this loud noise up here. Okay, next one, enrollment report. Pleasure, motion by Mr. Fiorello, second by Mr. Denon. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? And that motion carries 6-0. School police report from 7-1.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Denon, second by Mr. Fiorello. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? And that motion carries 6-0. Residency truancy report from 7-1.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Denon, second by Mr. Demotica. Thank you. Sorry, Mr. Fiorello. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries 6-0. And then the truancy report from 8-1. Last but not least.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Denon,
Second.
second by Mr. Fiorello. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries 6-0. Next item is a report out of executive session meeting from 8/11/2016. There were no votes taken, and I need a vote to seal the minutes of the executive session.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Woods, seconded by Mr. Fiorello. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries 6-0. And the report out of executive session meeting from 3/10 2016. It was an authorization on a 6-0 vote to authorize council to file a complaint in Superior Court requesting that the court restrain arbitration of grievances 15/16-1 and 15-16-2. And again, that motion was approved on a 6-0 vote. Next item on the agenda is the superintendent's report. Mr. Mitchell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have three things that I would like to share with you this evening, very briefly. I know people have been waiting patiently. Over the last 2 weeks, we have, for the first time, implemented a computer science boot camp. And the purpose of the computer science boot camp is to expose students to different kinds of computing and coding. And we provided opportunities for students at every grade level, that is elementary, middle, and high school. And given the amount of interest that we've had, we actually had to divide up the elementary level into grades 2 and 3. So one group of students worked with one teacher. Grades 4 and 5, all of the middle school, both middle schools, and the high school. And we had a significant number of students. We had a chance to visit and see the work that was being done by all of the students. In fact, today I was at Cumberland Hill. Bernadette Durkin had 4th and 5th graders, and I had a chance to actually see what they had produced. And Mr. Damana and I, in the different grade levels that we visited last week, we had a chance to really talk to students and ask them what they thought about it, and if they thought a week was enough. Of course, they all want more than 1 week next year. So for the first year, it was very successful. They had a lot of fun. We want to thank the teachers who facilitated this program at each of the levels, and I'd like to identify them. Tanya Cobb did grades 2 and 3. Bernadette Durkin did grades 4 and 5. Dean Palmer and Paula McMillan did the middle level, which combined both North Cumberland and McCourt Middle School, and there were 27 students involved in that. And at the high school, Josh Lima and Mike Stedden. And as I mentioned, Mr. Damana and I had a chance to visit each one of those programs. It was really exciting to see what students were creating, how much fun they were having, and what they were learning. So this was one of my goals, and you and I had many conversations about providing this opportunity. So I see that this is a program that will expand next summer. And we'll have to consider whether or not we want to provide more than just a week. So for those of you that don't know, this was 1 week opportunity for students, and I think the time was from 8:30 to 11:30, Mr. Damana. Yeah, so I would say without question that it was a real success, and we look forward to continuing again next year. So that's the computer science boot camp. The next item on the agenda is summer construction. I think the most important thing that everybody needs to know is that we're on schedule. We've had several meetings. In fact, there was Paul Murphy, who is the project manager, met with the fiscal subcommittee this evening and reported that we are on schedule. We are anticipating that school will start on time, as planned, that teachers will have an opportunity to get their rooms ready. Mr. Will DeJesus, employee in the district, Alex Prignano, our business manager, and I had an opportunity to visit almost all of our schools today. We spent a lot of time visiting all the schools and seeing the work that's been done, and I think people are going to be pleased and impressed with what they see when they report to school on August 30th or 31st. So we're right on schedule. That's the most important thing of all. And last but not least, I want to share something with all of you. I know that this is something that parents are interested in, and it has to do with the bus routes. As you know, the police have to approve all of the bus stops and the bus routes every year. And I got this note from Mr. Neves today. The Cumberland bus routes will be delivered to the Cumberland Police Department tomorrow. the 12th of August. There were minimal changes from last year. The traffic officer at the police station is on vacation. He'll return on Monday, the 15th. We should have approval by Friday, August 19th, and that information then will be provided in the Valley Breeze and on the school website. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Mitchell? Just a quick one for me. With regard to the summer construction updates at the middle school, typically there's orientation meeting, I think, right at the start of school or a day or two before. And two things happen. I do think there's distribution of Chromebooks, but also parents get to learn a little bit more about what happens if my child has an EpiPen and how does the lunch schedule work. Do we have any information on how that will work in lieu of the fact that we're not going to have schools kind of open and ready?
I had a brief conversation with Mrs. Coughlin yesterday because I know that this is something that has come up and other members of the school committee have brought it up as well. We are meeting at the beginning of next week, and I know that there is a plan in place to distribute Chromebooks, but I know that there is also an interest in those other issues that you just mentioned about medications and, fifth graders visiting the middle school for the first time. So we know that there are some concerns there that have to be addressed. So we'll make sure that we get some information out as soon as possible. We have our administrative retreat next week, and we'll have that conversation with the administrators, and we know that that is something that people are anxious to hear about, so we'll make sure we get something out.
And then the only other item is a comment on computer science boot camp. I mean, you knew you'd make me happy with that. So I think it's a great opportunity for kids to have that exposure to technology and a little bit on, the aspects of computer science and the advantages to it. So getting that early exposure, like any world language, athletics, mathematics, it's tremendous. So I really appreciate the organization and the effort, and very glad to hear such positive output.
I would just like to add that I want to thank Mr. Damana. He really did a lot of the organization of this activity at all three grade levels, so I just want to publicly acknowledge his time and effort in helping get this off the ground.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Damana. Anyone else? Okay, next item on the agenda is payment of bills. Mr. Demotica.
Madam Chair, we did meet upstairs tonight, and we went through the vouchers for the 2015-2016 school year and 2016-2017 school year. On a 3-0 vote, we approved the payment of the bills of $1,151,207.79. I would move passage that we pay the bills. Just one item. The 15-16 was $592,928.43, and the 16-17 year vouchers was $558,279.36, and I would move passage.
Thank you. Mr. Demotica moves passage of the payment of bills. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Denon. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? And that motion carries 6-0. Next item, Fiscal Management Subcommittee update. Mr. Demotica.
Madam Chair, we did meet upstairs. We had Paul Murphy in from E&E Systems looking for a progress payment on the construction work, and just an added thing to Mr. Mitchell was that they're talking about moving the furniture back into McCourt and North Cumberland, beginning August 23rd at North Cumberland and 22nd at North Cumberland and 23rd on the McCourt, and I believe it was August 16th for Ashton. So they are getting the schools ready, and I attended the meeting last Wednesday where I emailed everyone a detailed report of what I found at the meeting, so we're moving along well. And then we have we had some discussion, which Mr. Pignano will explain, in regards to bring us in compliant with state law and town law. We're going to be making some amendments to last year's budget, so we're properly aligned with what their town appropriated. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Demotica. And Policy and Procedures Subcommittee, Mr. Fiorello.
Yes, Madam Chair, we did meet this past Tuesday night. We were fortunate to have members of the student government at the meeting, as well as a couple of the teachers. Our main discussion was of the student dress code. The students were a very valuable part of the conversation. I think Mr. Mitchell and the other committee members would agree with me. That policy was tabled, though, so we won't be voting on it tonight. It's going to come back in 2 weeks with a draft of the revised policy. Just trying to make it a little less restrictive, and also hopefully change the way that the policy is actually checked, and we want to reduce the number of dress coding especially of the girls. There's been a lot of complaints about that from students and parents, actually. Also, we talked about the personnel dress code, which we're going to bring in line with some of the student dress codes, because teachers have also mentioned that there's been some uneven application of that policy to the teachers, as well as comparing them that, the students can't wear something, so you shouldn't be able to wear something, that kind of language. So we're just going to firm up the language in both policies and bring it back in 2 weeks, hopefully. We also discussed the use of school facilities, which we had to adjust the custodial rate that's going to be charged to groups, just as part of the additional cost that the additional cost of custodial services for this coming year. Minor change, I'll explain that a little bit more later. And we started talking about the student handbooks, which we're going to try to bring in alignment with all the school policies, as well as also alignment with one another. So it was a pretty full meeting, actually.
Very good. So just for housekeeping, you're anticipating K2 will come forward for the public hearing, but the other two were tabled. Thank you. Achievement and Communication Subcommittee did not meet, and Budget Task Force, we have no update on that. Comments from the public. Anyone here wish to speak this evening? No, hearing none. So we have the public hearing for reading of policies, amended policy, and the only one for public hearing, because the others the two others have been tabled, will be K2 use of school facilities. And Mr. Fiorello, do you want to just talk about the deltas in that, in case anyone has a question? Let's do it now, only in that if someone has a question during public hearing.
Sure. The only change was in the rate. The old rate for the custodial fee was $32.65. It's going to go up to $33.30 per hour. That is the only change
Thank you.
in the facilities.
Very good. Good.
Date changes too.
And date changes? Okay. So we'll open the public hearing at 8:29. Does anyone in the public wish to speak for or against K2 use of school facilities? No? Hearing none. Okay, so we will close the public hearing at 8:29:57 and move on to old business. We have discussion and or vote to approve SCPR 7/2016-10. Mr. Demotica, this was in fiscal?
Yes, Madam Chair, this was discussed in fiscal tonight. It's a resolution to do lighting at the high school and outside the buildings, and we have tabled this to the second meeting in September. The mayor is working on a town-wide LED program, and he would like to maybe propose that we go through their vendor, but it's been tabled until September.
Thank you. And there'll be no action on G3 or J20's personnel or student dress code, right, Mr. Fiorello? Okay, so we'll move on down to discussion and or vote to approve, and it's agended as proposed CTA collective bargaining agreement, but in discussion this evening, it was determined that it's best to represent it as the tentative agreement with the Cumberland Teachers Association. So that's what we will be taking action on this evening.
We need to amend the agenda.
It may make sense to make a motion to amend this item just while we're
I'll
here.
move it.
We have a motion by Mr. Fiorello to amend the agenda. Do we have a second? Second by Mr. Denon. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Those opposed? And that motion carries. So what this will mean is, should the committee approve the tentative agreement and the Cumberland Teachers Association also approve it, it would come back before us as a contract, and we would approve that with the fiscal note. Make sense? Okay, so pleasure of the committee on the revised agenda item.
Motion to approve.
So I have a motion by Mr. Fiorello. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Denon. Any further discussion? Mr. Wood?
Just to clarify, this is not an approval of the of a contract. It's just approval of a tentative agreement. So there's no really, you're not saying that you support the contract at this time, or you're
We're
not
not-
supporting it.
We're not approving the contract at this time. We're just approving the tentative agreement.
Thank you.
Yes. Anyone else? So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Those opposed?
Opposed?
So we have Mr. Wood, Mr. Denon, Mr. Fiorello, and Bolio are yes. And we have Salvatore and Mr. Salvatore and Mr. Demotica, we'll just call you Sal, no. And so that would be Wood, Denon, there's 6 of us, so it's 4-2. Next item on the agenda is discussion and/or vote to rescind teacher non-renewal recommendations. There are none. Next time, thank you. Next item on the agenda is discussion and/or vote to approve amended policy K2, use of school facilities.
Yes, like I said, it was only a matter of increasing the amount by, I don't have it in front of me anymore, about like
It was-
$1.50.
Yeah, from 32.65 to 33.30.
Yes. And I want to mention that we did not change any of the language that exempted school groups, PTOs, from having to pay the custodial. So they are not paying those fees.
Thank you. Thanks for the clarification. And are you moving passage?
I am.
There's a shocker. So, motion by Mr. Fiorello, a second by Mr. Salvatore. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Those opposed? And that motion carries 6-0. Next item, discussion and/or vote to approve resolutions SCR 2016-11, amended school budget.
Madam
Yes.
Chair, that was upstairs in fiscal. I handed out a sheet to everyone that they got. It just says Cumberland Public Schools. It doesn't say the fiscal information on the top. But what this is for housekeeping duties that we need to complete. As we're aware that this year, we had to be in compliance with what the town gave us for a budget. And what they approved with state aid, et cetera, is what our budget needs to be. And so last year's budget needs to be corrected as well, so it's in line, even though we spent more money than the town council approved us for when we added items back into our budget for last year. And so we have a budget amendment, and I'll read off the revenues and the decreases of what happened here. And so I'll read the resolution. Resolution authorizing and empowering the Cumberland School Committee to amend the 2015-2016 budget from $62,378,944 to $61,282,835, a reduction of $1,096,109, and this is in order to be in compliance with the town-approved budget. So the town council had approved only a budget of $61,282,835, and we actually budgeted after the town council took their vote of 62,378, 944, and that's against the law. So we are correcting it. So in revenues, we had a decrease of revenues, section 125 revenue of 125,000, decrease in proceeds from capital leases of 517,759, and a decrease of use of the fund balance to 453,350. That comes out to 1,096,109. In appropriations, there was a decrease in high school computers of 346,109, electricity of 150,000, natural gas of 50,000, TIA CREF certified 200,000, dental 100,000, non-certified pension 75,000, Social Security 25,000, decrease in workers' compensation of 10,000, decrease in severance of 40,000, decrease in vocational school payments of 46,000, and decrease of the community assistant principal salary line item of 54,000, which again comes out to 1,096,109. By approving this resolution tonight, it brings us in compliance with the town in regards to that, with the budget. And Mr. Pignano was here to explain all the questions that go along with it. If there are any questions from Mr. Pignano, we can come up and answer them.
Can you come up to the microphone or come sit with Mr. Wood? Would you mind, Mr. Prignano? Thank you.
And I think Paul explained it pretty clearly. The one thing, though, we did not spend more than the town appropriation, more than the 61. We budgeted more by adding, after the town passed this budget last year, we added some additional positions, used some fund balance and stuff to pay for it. The town that never went before the town council for approval. So we're really 61, 282, 935, or 835 is the number that the town passed for a school budget in their town budget. So we budgeted more. We're bringing it back in line to budget, but we didn't spend more than the 61 million to it. We didn't overspend the budget at either number. So if there's any questions,
Just one clarifying one. So when we approved the 16-17 budget, we had a starting point of 61, 282, 835? Or did we start our budget at 62, 378?
well, theoretically, we would have started at 61, 282, 935, but that doesn't matter. We have a budget now. We have to, once again, we're going to have to amend our budget that the school committee passed originally, that the town then reduced. As you know, they reduced us by about 800,000 on just town appropriation. So we had to take our budget back and make amendments for that. So we're going to have to go back now to get in line with what they've actually given us, and we've done that. We did that on the 14th, but we now have to submit that to the town so that they can schedule it for a vote to amend our budget. I think we'll be fine with that. We've talked to the finance director, the mayor. They're aware of this, and they have to open their budget up anyhow, because I think since they approved their budget, they've settled a couple of labor contracts that they now have to make adjustments for. So at that time, we would ask that our budget adjustments that we've made based on what the town action was would be also taken up.
Okay. Any questions? No? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Prignano. So, Mr. Demotica, are you...
So, Madam Chair, I would move passage of SCR 2016-11, authorizing these changes for the budget so that we can submit it to the town and be in compliance.
Mr. Demotica moves passage of
And this did pass upstairs 3-0.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Wood. All those, any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? That motion carries 6-0. Next item is SCPR 8 2016-13, progress payment for health and safety summer projects at Joseph L. McCourt Middle School, North Cumberland Middle School, and Ashton School.
Madam Chair, this is a progress payment to E&E Systems of Canton, Mass. We've had the architect sign off on the amount of work that they have done to date, and this is just another progress payment. So they've completed 44% of the work right now, and the architect did sign off as required, and the payment that we are approving tonight is $2,006,740.71. However, 5% is held back as usual with architect work being done just until they're completed and we've done the punch list and everything. So 5% of that will be held by the business manager's office until such time as we settle up with the architect and E&E and all the work. So as I stated earlier, everyone got an email from me in regards to the progress of where they are with the work and where we stand right now. So I would move passage. It did pass upstairs 3-0.
Thank you. Mr. Demotica moves passage of the progress payment. Second by Mr. Denon. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? That motion carries 6-0. Next item on the agenda is personnel recommendations. Mrs. Fogel?
Thank you. So I have the following personnel recommendations. I have 2 resignations for you this evening. I request the advice and consent to the school committee on the resignation of Alexandra Romano, secondary science teacher at North Cumberland Middle School, effective August 2nd, 2016, and the resignation of Christopher Scott, assistant principal at McCourt Middle School, effective August 26th of 2016.
Pleasure of the committee on the resignations.
Make a motion, we accept.
Second, Madam Chair.
Motion by Mr. Denon, Demotica, and seconded by Mr. Denon and Mr. Salvatore. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? And that motion carries 6-0.
I have 1 leave of absence for you. I request advice and consent to the school committee on the unpaid leave of absence of Kristen Duda, PE, APE health teacher at community school for the 2016-17 school year.
Pleasure of the committee on the leave of absence.
Make a motion, we approve.
Motion by Mr. Demotica, second by Mr. Denon. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Those opposed? And that motion carries 6-0.
Thank you. Next, I have appointments of current employees. So I request the advice and consent to the school committee on the following appointments. Kathleen Cardoza, curriculum coordinator for the Cumberland School Department, effective August 19th, 2016. This position comes with a $7,000 stipend. Heather Delfino, content area leader for world language at Cumberland High School, effective August 26, 2016. This has a $3,000 stipend. Kristen Jans, content area leader for mathematics at the high school, also with a $3,000 stipend. Melissa Kuznets, content area leader for English at the high school, with a $3,000 stipend. Amanda Latoile, content area leader for social studies at the high school, with a $3,000 stipend. Jessica Rock, content area leader for unified arts at the high school, with a $3,000 stipend. Deborah Rude, curriculum coordinator for the Cumberland School Department, effective August 19th, 2016. This comes with a $7,000 stipend. Anthony Silva, content area leader for science at the high school, with a $3,000 stipend. And lastly, Colin Smith, content area leader for physical education at the high school, with a $3,000 stipend.
Pleasure of the committee on the appointments for current employees. Motion by Mr.
Second,
Fiorello,
Madam
Chair.
second by Mr. Salvatore and Mr. Denon, Demotica. It's a he, it's something. All those in favor? Those opposed? And that motion carries 6-0.
Lastly, I have appointments for new employees who will be joining the Cumberland School Department. The first, I request the advice and consent of the school committee on the appointment of Nora Collins, school psychologist at BF Norton Elementary School and Cumberland High School, effective August 26, 2016. Nora will come to us as a step 7, and Nora is actually here in the audience, so I thought we could acknowledge her since she actually came. And then continuing, I have Christine Cruz, teacher assistant in a specialized classroom at BF Norton Elementary School, effective August 26th. Lauren Dunn, school psychologist at North Cumberland Middle School, effective August 26, 2016. She's a step 1. Sabra Integlia, special educator at Cumberland Hill Elementary School, effective August 26, 2016. She comes to us as a step 6. Catherine Kuklo, teacher assistant 1-to-1 at Cumberland Hill Elementary School, effective August 26, 2016. Kristen Lafreniere, teacher assistant at the Cumberland Preschool, effective August 26, 2016. Erica Riccatelli, special educator at North Cumberland Middle School, effective August 26, 2016. She comes to us as a step 1. And lastly, Thomas Robinson, teacher assistant at a specialized classroom for McCourt, effective August 26, 2016.
Pleasure of the committee on the appointments for new employees.
Motion to approve?
Motion by Mr. Denon.
Second.
Second by Mr. Salvatore and Mr. Demotica. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Those opposed? That motion carries 6-0.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mrs. Vogel. Next item on the agenda is school committee comments, school liaison reports. Hearing none. Mr. Fiorello, I think we're at the end.
Motion to adjourn.
I have a motion to adjourn by Mr. Fiorello. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Denon. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? And we are adjourned at 8:47. Thank you, everyone.